Why do we fight? Fighting is a coping mechanism to trauma. It could be mental, emotional, physical, or sexual trauma. Each of those traumas has the same effect on the body and our brain. A simple definition of trauma is that you thought your world was safe. Something happened, and then you no longer felt safe. In response to that trauma, our nervous system is automatically hardwired to keep us safe. There are 3 stages to this pre-programmed response. Whenever we feel threatened, we instinctively turn to the first level, which is social engagement. We call out for help, support, and comfort from the people around us. But if no one comes to our aid, or we are in immediate danger, then we revert to a more primitive way to survive: fight or flight. We fight off our attacker, or we run to a safe place. However, if this fails, if we can't get away, or we're held down, or we're trapped, or the adults in our life do not protect us, then we try to protect ourselves by shutting down and expending as little energy as possible. We are then in a state of freeze or collapse. So quick recap. The first stage is social engagement, or calls for help. The second stage is fight or flight. The third stage is collapse or freeze. The body signals defeat and withdraws. This is the stage where disassociation happens. In this video, we are focused on the fight component. It is important to recognize, though, that each of these reactions is in response to a threat or a trauma to keep us safe. Fight is a coping mechanism. It is a pre-programmed response of our nervous system when we feel threatened. That threat could be a real one, such as a trauma, or it could be a perceived threat, such as a trigger. A trigger is something that reminds us of a previous event where we felt threatened or unsafe. So what does this look like experientially? Our body has a built-in warning system that is part of our nervous system. When we are in danger, signals through stress hormones are sent to our brain. These signals provide a lightning-fast response to threats. Like when a car in front of you slams on their brakes, you feel a rush of emotion and quickly brake to avoid an accident. For me, this feels like a pulsing in my head, a wave of heat through my entire body, and my breathing gets faster. For a person not affected by trauma, you quickly return to a place of calm and continue going throughout your day. The car in front of you in this example can be compared to a trauma trigger for you. You are going throughout your day, and out of nowhere, there are red brake lights. You are in danger. It could be a smell, a song, a color, a name, or someone that reminds you of someone else. In an instant, you are back in that unsafe and vulnerable place. You respond with your go-to coping mechanism of fight. The hardest part? No one else sees the brake lights. Everyone else is going about their day as if nothing happened. For those who live with PTSD, the proverbial car slams on their brakes, you experience a trauma trigger that no one else sees or relates to. Your warning system goes off and then does not go back to a place of balance and calm. Instead, stress hormones stay elevated. Danger signals continue to flood your entire system repeatedly, day after day, for weeks, months, and years on end. In the long term, this cycle wreaks havoc on your health. Dr. Kolk, in his book, The Body Keeps the Score, explains it this way. After trauma, the world is experienced with a different nervous system. The survivor's energy now becomes focused on suppressing inner chaos at the expense of spontaneous involvement in their own life. These attempts to maintain control over unbearable physiological reactions can result in a whole range of physical symptoms, including fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, and other autoimmune diseases. This explains why it is critical for trauma treatment to engage the entire body, mind, and brain. Now, you might think to yourself, I've never experienced a trauma, or, well, yeah, I experienced some hard things, but other people had it so much worse. This is not the Olympics of suffering, and just because someone else's journey looks different than yours does not mean that yours isn't valid. Something to be aware of is chronic emotional abuse and neglect can be just as devastating as physical abuse and sexual molestation. Not being seen, not being known, and having nowhere to turn to feel safe is devastating at any age, but it is particularly destructive for young children. If your go-to emotion in your life when you feel threatened, unsafe, or vulnerable is fight, you are not alone. It is meaningful to recognize that this is a stress response. It is a reaction to a time and place in your life where you felt unseen, unheard, or unsafe. And damn it, if you're going to let that happen again. That is why you are fighting. You will protect yourself and keep yourself safe, especially if you weren't in a position to do so previously. It's also worthwhile to bring up that different personality types tend to respond to trauma and triggers differently. In some of our videos, we've talked about the personality types: dreamer, healer, closer, and thinker. I joke that the go-to emotion for closers is anger, and that they are the most likely to react with a fight response, though other personality combinations can also. You may be highly competitive, ambitious, and driven. You may gain your self-worth from this drive. You possess great confidence, which is often taken as arrogance, though it may not be. If you will do whatever it takes to accomplish a goal and tend to be very creative in finding solutions that no one else sees, your coping mechanism for stress is quite often fight. This is because that response is in alignment with protecting what you value and how you see the world. I relate to this because I'm a closer, and as a child, my mom would say to me, she would rather hit you than look at you. My mother was a healer, and sometimes she was a bit overwhelmed by my tenacity. Now, I'm not saying a fight response is a bad thing. The question for you, if this is something you relate to, is your reaction serving you? Is it helping you be the highest and best version of yourself? Or are there things you would like to do differently? Nobody can answer those questions but you. Okay, so I'm going to tell you about 3 different times in my life. Lucky you. Story time. Okay, so we were on a trip, and my siblings and I had gone to like this youth activity. Basically, it was like childcare while our parents went and did other things. And so these weren't kids that we knew or had any sort of relationship with. I was a teenager, not quite a teenager, but that age where boys and girls like start to like each other. Except for I was a tomboy, so I definitely didn't like boys. Ew, that's gross. Anyway, there's these 2 little boys there that were friends. And one of the little boys decided that he liked me and he wanted to be my friend and hang out with me instead of hanging out with his buddy. Well, his buddy took that hard and decided to start picking on me. And if you know anything about me outside of YouTube, I am not the type of personality that takes well to being picked on. And so, and my dad, who has a background in martial arts, taught me how to hit correctly. And so this little boy keeps physically attacking me, and he pins me down on the ground. And I push him off and I say, "Don't do that, or I'm going to hurt you." And he did it a second time, and I push him off and I say, "Don't do that, or I'm going to hurt you." He does it a third time, and I give him a black eye. And I told him, "I told you I was going to hurt you. You shouldn't have done that." Of course, the adults that were watching us were horrified. They thought I was way out of line. They didn't know the backstory. My own brother, who's a healer, and we have a great relationship, said to me, "Why are you always hitting people? It's so embarrassing." And I said to him, "Well, you're my big brother, and if you protected me, I wouldn't have to protect myself." I had a level of tenacity, for sure, that has mellowed out with experience and age. But I would look at that situation and I would say, was that serving me? Was that instinct to fight serving me? And I would say it absolutely was. Story time. We're going to go to a story from my second marriage, which was rough. It was really rough. So we were having a fight, and he had just, gotten drunk and slept with someone because that's within our moral values. And then he had told me during this fight, it was a couple days later, he told me that if I hadn't been such a bitch, that he wouldn't have cheated. And well, I hit him. I didn't give him a black eye, but I hit him and it turned into a physical altercation. And I was so angry for, what he did and then what he said. And then the fact that he tried to blame it on me, which is completely ridiculous, right? But I also realized something later that day and the next day, besides the fact we were getting divorced, was that I had given him my power. I had given up my choices because I didn't respond to the stupid things he said. I reacted. And I did not ever want to be in the position where I wasn't in control of my own emotions or my own response. And that was a huge lesson in my life, that we can be justified in how we behave. And I would say in that situation, I was justified. But is justified what I want? And I would say in that situation, fighting that way didn't serve me. Going to my marriage with Jonathan, there was definitely bumps and roller coasters in my previous marriages, and that absolutely affected our marriage now. And Jonathan had never been married before and was so sweet and so kind and just out of graduate school as a marriage and family therapist. But we still had to work through our own conflict resolution skills. We still had to figure out what that looked like for us. And I absolutely had the tendency to be volcanic and lash out and explode. And he would be so hurt because one of his love languages is words of affirmation. So harsh and critical words for him are just as devastating or even more devastating than physical attacks. And that was also a place in my life where I decided that I didn't want to be this fighter, that didn't serve me, that's not how I wanted to show up. And so I had to go through the work and the process of learning new behaviors and learning new habits and learning healthy conflict resolution. On the flip side of that, there's been more than a few times that there has been incidents regarding my children that I have had to show up. Well, I didn't have to, but I chose to show up in a very firm manner. And there have been incidents with my children that I have had to show up in a very firm manner. And my kids know that about me and they appreciate it. But it is that response, not so much a fight response that is just a reaction, but a protection response, and I am still very much in control of my emotions. And I just wanted to share those stories with you because we all have our own journeys and we all have our own stories, and sometimes it can feel a little bit lonely or like no one understands, or maybe there's shame surrounding our stories. And I want you to know that you aren't alone. So the question to ask yourself isn't whether your fight response is good or bad or justified. The question is, who do you want to be in your life and how do you want to show up? And is our coping mechanism for stress, trauma, or triggers serving you, or is it out of balance? Will you do me a favor? If this video has been helpful for you, will you share it with a family member or loved one who could also use this support? And remember to keep shining. We need your light.